Ladies and gentlemen, it is the Football Scoop Podcast, Tuesday morning, the morning after Auburn made moves. So, John Cohen's officially on board as athletic director. Before he even arrives, powers that be, President Roberts, took action and removed Brian Harsin as the head football coach. Cadillac will take over, serve as the interim. Made the most sense. I think we talked about that a few weeks ago, that Cadillac was the guy that would serve as interim. Just because he's the guy you'd most likely want to hang on to for recruiting purposes. A lot of Brian Harsin's staff came with Hars from Boise, and those aren't the great recruiters, which is why Auburn's in this problem. Hence, Cadillac gets a shot, continue to endear the fan base to him, and he stays on in the future, hopefully, with part of a great staff. Part of why Brian Harsin got here, I think, was he came in, the search went on forever and ever and ever. And then they hired him. They had Bobo there. They had Will Friend there. Bobo didn't work out. He was asked to leave. Will Friend stayed on. It just wasn't a good mix up front. They brought some Boise guys, good football coaches, not great recruiters in the state of Alabama, going toe-to-toe with Nick. And we're here today. Today, I'm Scott Roussel. I'm joined by our colleagues, Zach Barnett, John Brice. We're here to give thoughts and feedback on all things Auburn, where the search goes from here. This is not shocking to anybody, but we're here. And let's go. Zach, I'm going to hand you the mic, and you do what you want to do with it.
Okay, so I'm going to start here with a story. My dad did games on ESPN for years. And in 2007, week 2, he was at Auburn to call the Auburn-South Florida game. Auburn ended up losing that game to what proved to be a pretty decent South Florida team. They were ranked number 2 at one point, but that's here nor there. So Auburn loses the game. He's done. He's off the air. He's in the rental car, driving back to the hotel, stuck in traffic, listening to the post-game call-in show. And it is call after call after call of, when we fire Tommy Tuberville, we should hire this guy. When we fire Tommy Tuberville, we should hire this guy. When we fire him, and keep in mind, obviously they just lost the game they shouldn't have lost. They were 2 games removed from a 2006 season where they went 11-2, won the Cotton Bowl, and finished in the top 10. At that point, they'd finished in the top 10 2 of the last 3 seasons, and they couldn't wait to get rid of Tommy Tuberville. And they ended up being pretty good that year. I think they went 9-4 in 07, and then obviously he was out in 08. So that's an anecdotal story, but I feel like the last 15 years of Auburn history have proven that to be pretty instructive. So this is the point in these podcasts where I usually share some research. I don't feel like we need a whole lot of research into Auburn. Everybody knows the strengths and weaknesses of the job. But I did want to share this. So in the last 5 classes, including this one, the number of 4- and 5-star recruits within the state of Alabama is 83 total, about 16 a year. You got 16 blue chip kids per year in your backyard. In those 5 classes, including this one, Auburn has signed 10 of them. So you're getting 16 blue chips a year, you're signing 2. And obviously, that's not all on Brian Harsin. That goes back to the Gus Malzahn days. So, you're never going to be able to sweep the state of Alabama, and you're not going to be able to sustain yourself just with blue chips from Alabama. But Auburn is smack dab in the middle of the most competitive recruiting market in the country, and they're not going to be able to win again until they can get the blue chip kids from their home state to stay home.
They have to recruit better in-state, and then they also have always had success, obviously, in Columbus, Georgia, and in around South Georgia. And then Auburn also has always had great success in Florida, and surprisingly, and especially South Florida, when Auburn has had some of its best teams. They've always had a strong presence in South Florida. For many, many years, it was Eddie Grant and company that delivered some great players on the recruiting trail to Auburn. But the recipe, you're exactly right on recruiting, Zach. They have to do a better job of keeping more than like 10 to 12% of in-state blue chippers in-state with them, and then they have to hit those other two areas that are very, very much key for them. Scott?
And you're 2 hours southwest of Atlanta. You got to go.
Mhm.
You got to go to Atlanta and do better. So
The
it's
stories of the
I
Harsin
mean,
staff, they
yeah.
weren't getting out and recruiting high schools in the local area like they should. Like I've read multiple stories of Alabama high school coaches being like, "Yeah, Auburn hadn't been here. We hadn't talked to anybody at Auburn," and that can't happen.
Yeah, I don't understand that. Anyway, Auburn is going to be just fine. Auburn is a great university. They're gonna hire somebody, and they're gonna get aligned, and they're gonna be just fine. So it's unfortunate. Brian Harsin's a good man. He's a good football coach. It just the fit was wrong, the timing was wrong, the alignment was not correct, and here we are. So it happens in this profession. He's getting paid just fine. It's unfortunate for a lot of the assistants where it just really upsets their lives and is a massive change for them, and even the support staff, the people who are making $30,000 and $40,000, where they get turned upside down, and sometimes this winds up being a devastating move for them. Anyway, it's a very hard part of the job. It's nothing fun at all, but it's happening. So we're here to speak about it. Zach, lead me forward. How do we talk about some candidates?
I don't think there's a whole lot of mystery here. So let's start with Hugh Freeze.
I'll start by saying John Brice did a great job writing this up yesterday on the website. John's got a great, intro article to, all right, here's where we are. Here are the 3 or 4 guys who really have a realistic shot. This is where the search already stands. The vetting of the athletic directors went on, say, for the past month, maybe 6 weeks. And they have a pretty good idea what they want to do. The athletic directors who really had a shot at this thing, obviously Cohen now, who is the selected one, they spoke with leadership, with President Roberts, with the biggest boosters, whose names are on the building, and very nice new building, by the way. And they know what they want to do. So I think they have a very short list, and they're going to go out and try and make it happen as soon as possible. Once the season ends, most of these guys are currently coaching. All these guys are currently coaching.
Well, and again, like as we've talked about, and as we frankly have seen at the University of Tennessee this year, the turnaround time can be so quick that if you're Auburn, you have to have somebody in by the end of November, 1st of December, so that you can hit those 2 critical weeks before that signing day in December, so that you can be incredibly active in the transfer portal. I do believe Auburn can get back sooner rather than later. I don't think Auburn is as close to being back as what we talked about a year ago with SC. Just different dynamics, different things at play for SC that made that an easier path back. But I do believe if Auburn gets fully aligned, and that's something that's been missing for a really long time, as Zach alluded to, but if Auburn gets fully aligned top down, the motivation to get back quick is there. The resources to get back quick are there, and they'll be very active in NIL opportunities as well to help get them back again very, very quickly.
I want to, before we talk about specific guys, I want to bring up one topic of conversation. So John Cohen's the AD. He just got there. He probably hadn't even moved into his office yet, but he's the AD. He's the point man. Let's just say that he was like, guys, I really like Chip Kelly as the head coach. I think he's the best guy. He's the best guy for reasons X, Y, and Z. He hired 2 coaches at Mississippi State who were total outliers, and Joe Moorhead and Mike Leach. They were not SEC guys by any stretch of the imagination. So let's say he picks someone, and he's the AD, and he picks someone that's out of left field, not one of the guys that is on anybody's sort of radar. How does that work? How much power does he have here? Is he trying to lead the consensus of the boosters and the community and the president, or because I don't believe they're going to be like, all right, John, here's the keys to your office. Let us know who you've hired.
Yeah. Whereas at Mississippi State, that position, and that position had been, the athletic director position had been very successful, right? Going Greg Burns, Scott Strickland, and handing it down to John. They kind of were the voice, singular voice There wasn't the massive booster coming over the top, weighing in on everything and demanding, pounding the table. Auburn's different, right? It's not that well aligned, and there are some boosters who expect to have the phone answered on the first ring. That's what they've tried to work through this interview process, and that's what they've all tried to say. And I believe that was the message that was let out to the media yesterday was, hey, we're hiring him to be that guy here at Auburn, and we're all aligned with him. That was the message. Hopefully that's true. We'll see. I don't think anyone who knows the last 50 years of Auburn expects that to be the case, but we'll see.
It'll be the case as long as he hires exactly who they decide they want him to hire.
Exactly. It's the message on one hand is John Cohen is our AD. He has autonomy. And then on the other hand, it's, John, you did a great job, but it's every single person. It's here's the three guys, here's these guys, here's these guys. And it's like, are we sure? How can these two things go hand in hand?
Reality is, from John Cohen's history at Mississippi State, he was not sitting in some glass tower and saying, this is what I command. He was gauging the president of the university. He was gauging some boosters. He was gauging the media's reaction. He was soliciting input and feedback and listening to people in concert with making decisions and making course corrections thereafter. I suspect that will still be the same here. I don't think he's just going to lay it down and say, this is what we're doing. He is going to work all angles and try to keep everybody happy and keep the boat rowing. Hopefully it works out.
Yeah, I would contend that there's some merit to that approach, and that there is some positives to a leadership approach that allows you to engage in others and get feedback, and then try to make the absolute best decision based on that. You can believe you know which way to go, what you think is the best way to go, and that transcends making a college football hire. I think the way that you make the best informed decision gives you the chance for the best amount of success.
Agreed.
Okay, so let's talk candidate. Let's start. He's first name I've written down, not necessarily saying he's the favorite, but let's start here. Hugh Freeze.
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite on the record, quite on the table, quite on whatever you want me to be on, that Hugh Freeze is a fabulous coach. I think that he deserves another opportunity at a Power 5 program. And I think that he has made Liberty enter into that conversation as one of the premium group of 5 programs anywhere in college football. So he's had tremendous success already in the SEC. He knows the footprint. He has great contacts all over the South. And he's a guy that deserves the opportunity, in my opinion. And I think it's very critical to note, as Zach and I reported on last week, he can leave Liberty despite that new deal without a great deal of financial harm.
Yeah, so I think Hugh is a program builder. He's a leader. Hugh would be a great hire. Actually, I think Hugh is probably the person they should hire. Doesn't mean they will, but probably should. Hugh's agent, Liberty, the planets all aligned. They got a great new deal for Hugh that was announced last week. It's our understanding from sources it doesn't lock him into Liberty at all. It's roughly the same kind of buyout. We're talking just south of $3 million. If Auburn were to come today and say, "You're our guy," here's twice. Liberty offered him basically $5 million a year. If Auburn came in and said, "We got to have you," it's $10 million a year. He couldn't say no. I think it's about $3 million or a little bit less to get Hugh out of there. Very approachable for Auburn dynamics. And our opinion, we've all known Hugh for a long time. I think Hugh would be great there. He'd build a staff. Hugh starts with great people, but he builds a staff thinking through recruiting and recruiting relationships, and he knows who has the relationships at which schools. He's very good at what he does.
All right, let's go to name number 2, Lane Kiffin.
Boy, if your goal is to go head to head with Alabama, and that's really what you're focused on, and you want somebody who can make this happen next year, Lane, come to the SIP, transfer to the SIP, the portal king, all that stuff. He made all that happen. He embraced all that, and doesn't necessarily have the war chest at Ole Miss that some other places could produce, like Auburn likely to produce, or he has begun to produce. You arm Lane with the ability to attract the best people, and he already knows how to attract them, and he can game plan, scheme. Lane's staffs have not been the best recruiting staff, whereas Hugh Freeze structured his staff, to have great recruiters. Lane has he's hired some very good football coaches. I'm not sure they've been the best recruiters, to be honest. And that's something I think John Cohen's aware of and would think through. But as John Brice keeps saying, you can go to the portal and bring him in and make it happen just like that. So pluses and minuses.
And with Lane, I would say part of that's been his career arc, his career evolution. When he was hired at the University of Tennessee as head coach, his number one priority was putting together a staff that could recruit at an elite level. And they very quickly kind of ran afoul of some recruiting violations in his short time at the University of Tennessee. A big part of that was the Ed Orgeron component that he had with him at Tennessee and then at USC. But then he has evolved and done a better job of blending good recruiters with what he wants, and that is really good coaches. And I think you continue to see that he's grown his approach on the defensive side of the ball to getting better coaches, to continuing to surround himself with really good coaches. And Lane knows he can recruit when he has to. Lane would tell you he doesn't just love recruiting, but he has grown in his role as a recruiter, whether that's at the high school level or whether that's recruiting out of the portal. And I know some people have asked, why would Lane leave Ole Miss for Auburn? Why would Lane want a part of that mess? Well, if Auburn is saying we've got things solved now and that we are aligned, there's a number of things that Auburn just presents that Ole Miss can't. You just alluded to it, Scott, the war chest component, the fact that the Jordan-Hare Stadium seats 20,000 more than Vaught Hemingway, the fact that Alabama, as Zach already noted, as a state produces that volume of blue chip prospects year after year after year. And the other thing is yesterday, Nick Saban turned 72, I believe it was. He's not going to coach forever, but Lane relishes the opportunity to go against Nick Saban while he can. And there's nowhere, the two places where it matters the most to go against Nick Saban are Auburn and Tennessee.
I'll tell you, what I think is a very relevant fact that I don't know if it gets discussed much or not, but career aspirations, comparing Hugh Freeze and Lane Kiffin. Hugh Freeze wants to get back in the SEC. He wants to win the SEC and win the national championship. That's what he wants to do. He wants to prove that he was in the right spot before. He made mistakes. He believes you should be forgiven. You should pay your penance, be forgiven, do the work, earn your way back, and achieve the ultimate success. Lane Kiffin, the ultimate success for him is winning Super Bowls. Lane, long-term, wants to win in the NFL.
Yeah.
I don't know that Auburn helps him do that. It doesn't mean he wouldn't take the job if offered a huge amount of money and all those things. He might see it as a logical stepping stone. I don't know. I'm just saying Hugh could go there and be there forever. Lane, I don't think desires to go there and be there forever. Just a thought. Well,
and to that end, look at where Lane has spent the formative years throughout his life, and the smallest place he's been now has been Oxford. But I mean, along the path, this is a guy who was born in Minnesota, I think, and grew up there in the Minneapolis area while his dad was coaching. He's lived in Tampa Bay. He's lived in LA. He's lived on the West Coast. He's lived in Knoxville, which is one of the larger media markets and cities in the SEC footprint. So whether it's in Oxford, Mississippi, or whether it's in Auburn, Alabama, that I know, Scott, you and I have visited all of those places. They're great, great places. But Lane has typically resided, and of course his time in South Florida, just in larger metropolitan areas. Mm-hmm. Which also ties in to the NFL component that you're speaking on, in my opinion.
All right. Name number 3 for the big 3 for this job is Deion Sanders.
Prime time. I mean, how much fun would Deion be there? Deion has proven himself. There were so many questions. I think we reported early on that Deion might actually be a candidate at Arkansas. You're like, y'all crazy. No, that was real. That was real. Deion got consideration again last year at Power 5 level. People would be crazy not to, if they haven't seen and been intrigued by what Deion's going. I mean, you just hired John Cohen, who's right just north of Jackson State, right? Prime has been up to Mississippi State's campus. Unquestionably, John Cohen's aware of what Prime has done in Jackson, Mississippi. Would everyone in Auburn come around? I think they would, honestly. He's that personality that people are just drawn to. I think he'd be a fantastic hire, great fun. I'll tell you where I think the little bit of a rub is Deion is unbelievable himself. Deion did not build a great first staff at Jackson State. As a matter of fact, their offense coordinator hire, we were all like, really? And that just didn't work out at all. He made a change, and that has taken off this year, and they're undefeated. But I worry a little bit about the staff, just a little bit. Prime's like, I got this, don't worry. But that would be my one concern.
Yeah, and I think, again, as we've talked about with some other candidates, as we talk about often in other jobs and other positions, these coaches evolve, and they evolve in realizing what they need surrounding them and who they need surrounding them and what type of men and what type of coaches they need surrounding them. And I think that Deion, to his credit, proved that he was a quick learner, a quick study, and saw that he needed significant changes after his offense was so bad. And he's pretty candidly, because that's what Deion does, he's spoken pretty candidly about how terrible they were on offense when he first got there and how much they had to improve that. Here's the other thing and I wrote about this, about how well he's recruited, about how he can go into any living room, about how they already have 25 guys on roster that either are directly from Power 5 programs or came to Jackson State with committable Power 5 offers. I think that's an important delineation to make. What I'm most impressed with about Deion Sanders is, and he, again, provides this window into his program, is what he does for accountability, what he does for those guys in telling them, you will go to class. You will not wear tank tops to class. You will sit in the front of the class. You will say, yes, sir. You will say, yes, ma'am. We will leave your butt behind on this trip to Jacksonville to play in an NFL stadium because you didn't uphold our standards for the team this week, for the program this week. And also, I'm going to take some time and preach on faith to you. And I have that cachet because I'm Coach Prime Deion Sanders. And you're going to get a chance to get an education, be improved as a football player, and grow spiritually under me. I love that about Deion. I don't know. When I first started working with you guys 2+ years ago, almost 3 years ago now, and we started writing the Deion stuff, at first it was just sort of amusing, but it's one of the favorite parts of my week now every week.
So Auburn's creed is very faith-based. And, Auburn's a public institution, but there is a strong faith component on that campus. And it would not be frowned upon in any way. They would respect it and embrace it. I'll tell you, we began this with Auburn needs to recruit better from the South and from the North, and the South meaning Florida, the North meaning up towards Atlanta and off east into Georgia. Boy, you got to hire a guy who can recruit Atlanta and Florida. Come on.
Right.
Come
on.
So obviously, if you're Auburn, you don't want to make your hire based on what scares Alabama and Georgia. You want to hire the best football coach you can get. But is Primetime the coach that's most scares Alabama and Georgia day one? Like, do y'all think Auburn's immediately starts recruiting at a top 5 level with Primetime? And what's the negative pitch from the rest of the SEC? Because they're not just going to lay down.
I think that if it's Prime, that Auburn immediately starts recruiting at a top 10 level. I do. I also think, as I touched on already, the two jobs where you coach against Alabama that matter the most are Auburn and Tennessee. And here's another thing to consider. how natural would that rivalry already be built in with Prime at Auburn when they're sitting there doing Aflac commercials together? Imagine those guys. Imagine those guys wearing crimson and gray and orange and blue to record their Aflac commercials together. And maybe Aflac incorporates an elephant and a tiger to go with the duck and the goat that it's already using in those Nick Saban commercials. So yeah, I think if Auburn hires any of the three first guys that we've talked about, there's going to be tremendous optimism, tremendous upside, and tremendous belief that Auburn made a good hire. I think if we're ranking among those three, I think Deion and Lane make Alabama the most instantly nervous, but I think Hugh Freeze, because of what he built at Ole Miss, because he's been successful and been a postseason coach by year two, literally everywhere he's been, also presents some long-term concerns for Alabama. And again, I will just point out the fact Nick Saban turned 72 yesterday. He can't coach forever.
So I would switch that around. I would tell you, I think Alabama would be most, I don't know what the right term is. They would not like to see Auburn hire Deion and Hugh. Hugh beat Alabama. I mean, Hugh did it and always pressed them. Lane, Lane. Yeah, I think Lane's like, all right. Nick knows Lane. He's like, I got this. I know what Lane is. And I think Nick's staffs outwork Lane's staffs. Just my opinion.
I agree. I'd probably rank Hugh, Deion, Lane if I'm Auburn from those three.
Probably.
Okay, let's move off the beaten path a little bit. This is a guy who is getting a lot of mention, pretty high up on the betting markets, and that is former Auburn offensive line coach, current Baylor offensive coordinator, Jeff Grimes.
Really good football coach. I think Auburn's like, hey, we've burned like $50 million in the past couple years. I don't think they're like, we burned it, we're going to hire Jeff Grimes. I don't think so. Just personal opinion. Y'all know I've talked a lot about it. I love Jeff Grimes. I think he's a great football coach, great leader. I just think they're going for bigger, more proven head coach.
Yeah, I think there's a whole group of these guys that we could talk about. Jeff Grimes, an Alex Golish, Jeff Levy, a Kendall Briles, even a Phil Longo. I believe all five of those guys are major college head coaches sooner rather than later. I still think, with maybe the exception of Longo, if he's tabbed to eventually replace Mac Brown, that most of them are going to have to go somewhere to a step in between being a Baylor, Tennessee, Arkansas, Oklahoma offensive coordinator into being a Power 5 head coach, unless it's just, a different type Power 5 program than an Auburn or a Tennessee or an Ole Miss or Arkansas or one of those. I think there's one necessary step there that is missing.
Yeah, I mean, you could see if Aranda went somewhere, Grimes could step up. You could see if Heupel went somewhere, the Golish could step up. But yeah, I agree with you. I know exactly what you're saying.
Okay, let's John, this was someone that was in your piece that I have not seen elsewhere, and that is Tennessee head coach Josh Heupel.
Yeah, and that's just something we reported on to begin with when Auburn was open the last time, and there was some interest there between those parties. When Auburn was moving on from Malzahn, I think Auburn absolutely could have hired Josh Heupel at that time. I don't think at all Josh Heupel leaves the University of Tennessee for Auburn now, but I was floored when a very high-ranking college official, college industry person told me yesterday, if I'm Josh Heupel's agent, I make a run at this job. And that came on the heels of Sunday, Tony Romo, which I included in the story, just very casually mentioning in the Eagles-Steelers broadcast, Josh Heupel's going to be on the radar for every NFL job that comes open this year. And Jim Nantz says, I can tell by the way that you're saying that you absolutely know something. And then Jim Nantz just said, okay, Tony, thanks. Okay, and so, yeah, I thought that was really interesting. I was stunned that this person said that about Josh Heupel and company. But again, it was a good opportunity to point out the fact, and we wrote it at the time, that Josh Heupel was very much a candidate of interest 2 years ago when Auburn made this move and didn't get a lot of traction. And where might the Tigers be now had that one gotten further down the road?
So agents also love to capitalize on success and reported interest. So Hype's having a great year at Tennessee. Unbelievable year. Trajectory of the program's off the charts. Hey, Danny White, maybe it's time to give him a big extension. Yeah. Oh, wait, Auburn's calling? Yeah, yep. Make that happen. Make that happen right now. So, you flame that fire a little, and all of a sudden the big extension comes. So
yeah, and I should make clear, this was a third party person. This was a college industry person, not speaking to me on Josh Heupel's behalf, not speaking to me on Auburn's behalf. So yeah, it's the time of year where everybody, especially when, in my opinion, you basically have already won National Coach of the Year like Josh Heupel has, but it's the time of year where these things happen. And look, Josh Heupel got a raise after last season, and he's still 11th in the SEC. And I've made this point on Knoxville TV with NBC when I do some spots there. I've made this point on radio. Josh Heupel's already proven that he's underpaid, so he will get paid after this season. It's a matter of how much, how far, how high.
Another coach in the SEC East that gets mentioned for a lot of jobs that I think we all kind of are in agreement on, but I'm going to mention him here. That's Kentucky's Mark Stoops.
I don't know if we're in agreement on his position here. My opinion is, if Mark's going to leave, he's going somewhere with an easier path to a national championship. And yeah, Auburn is easier than Kentucky, perhaps. But boy, Auburn's a dogfight for everything. And I just don't think that's what I don't think that's where Mark is in life. Having, I went up there last year, spent some time with those guys. Oh man, Mark's in a great place. He really is. And I know the Calipari basketball school, blah, blah, blah. You're like stepping into a frying pan at Auburn. And I don't know why you do that.
Yeah,
I agree.
No, I don't see it. And again, like Mark Stoops eventually replacing Kirk Ferentz, I think we all could see that path happening. I still think that Nebraska will give Mark Stoops every conversation he's willing to have with them in this cycle. But Mark Stoops at Auburn, I don't see that at all.
Okay, who did I miss?
I'm not sure. Go ahead, Scott. Sorry.
All right, so think lay of the land. Think of the top 15 programs. So John Cohen brought in Joe Moorhead, who was, very, very successful lower level head coach, Penn State, brings him down, looking for it to catch, lightning in a bottle. Doesn't work. Mike Leach, all the potential in the world to be a home run. You're at Mississippi State, which, it's Mississippi State. You gotta try something. Auburn's not a place you got to try something. You've got the resources. You can go big boy style. So look at the lay of the land. Who's thriving in college football? This is a stretch, but so was hiring him in the first place. Dan Lanning at Oregon, wins a national championship at Georgia, goes to Oregon, and oh my goodness, have they put it together? It's an interesting idea. There's some other, coaches who are doing real well. To me, I think the first three that we talked about, we talked about Hugh, Lane, and Prime. That's kind of your search. But if you want to say, all right, we got to interview a few more guys and make sure we got this right. Boy, Dan Lanning's an impressive young guy, type of guy that people could rally around.
Yeah, and again, the type of guy that already has tremendous relationships and resources in the South, human resources that he can lean on. So yeah, I can see the Dan Lanning there, and he's proved to be quite the coach in year one, and to have held things together and then push them forward on a very pronounced upward trajectory after that opening loss against Georgia tells you a lot about how Dan Lanning is handling things both on the surface and below the surface at Oregon.
I'll tell you, the funniest one I got yesterday was another FBS head coach texted me, and he says, "You want to know who the next Auburn head coach will be?" Of course, I responded, "Yes." Gus. I was like, no. And his response was, "Maybe nuclear winter, maybe not." I'm like, interesting. Gus is not going to be the next head coach, but that's a fun thought. I don't want to spoil nuclear winter for anyone, but
good times.
I think we're in those top three, and
Yeah.
I just don't know why they wouldn't be in those top three.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm putting action on this search, then I'm taking those three versus everybody. So, yeah, I might do T-shirts that says, Deion, Hugh, and Lane versus everybody.
Yeah, I agree. And it's the chance, the odds of this getting to option D are you don't want to say zero, as close to zero as you can get.
I'll tell you, other people were going to throw out Matt Rule. I don't see it. I don't love it.
We had it. We had it in our story yesterday, and I did my best to fully vet any Matt Rule information that we could get. I'm just not convinced that's a fit on either side right now. I'm really not. And look, Auburn has to get a great coach, and ultimately, as long as they get a coach that wins a lot, that should be all that matters. But it's impossible to also ignore that they've played a brand of ugly football now for 2 years, and their offense was already struggling near the end under Gus. But they're 13th out of 14 teams in the SEC right now at scoring. Scoring in college football has never been higher. You'd have to go back to about 2008 when scoring at Auburn has been this bad.
Yeah, you're stepping into the ring, fighting with the heavyweights. You got Nick on your left and Kirby on your right, depending on, I guess, which way on the map you're looking. Like, it takes a certain type of personality to say, bring that on. And you get the right one, and there's nothing stopping you from being right there with those two. But it takes a certain personality, and Matt Rule's not in a place in his life to do that.
Yep,
I would agree. So this one plays out, I presume, like immediately after the regular season. I don't think they can wait for.
I think we'll know
championship bowls, all that stuff. I think they got to move.
I think we'll know that weekend of the games on the 26th, 2 days after Thanksgiving. We'll know by then exactly what direction Auburn is going, in my opinion, and we'll have to know. Auburn will have to know again, because urgency. It's never been more paramount to a search than what it is now with that mid-December signing day. As somebody pointed out to me when we wrote about the major NIL changes last week, I had an immediate Power 5 recruiting director reach out to me and say, I cannot believe they're dropping these changes 55 days before signing day. So now here we are, 48 days. Tomorrow it's technically 49. Tomorrow it's 49 days from that early signing period in December. There's your timeline. I mean, you've got to have somebody 14 days before that. So 35 days from now, we've got to know who Auburn's next head coach is.
I bet you it's less than 20.
I'm laughing. We're trick-or-treating last night, and some little girl walked up to me. This little girl lives down the street, and I said something about, how old are you? And she's like, I'm 7. My birthday's in 64 days. I was like, she knew it was 64 days. Like John Brice is quoting 49 days. Y'all are sick people. I love you.
We bring in the best information we can. We don't want to speak in generalities here. I'm telling you with precision when these dates are hitting and stuff has to happen.
Any closing thoughts, gentlemen?
I'm excited to watch this one.
Go hire the right guy.
It's going to be fun. Yeah.
Do the right thing. All right, we're the Football Scoop Podcast on Twitter. I'm Football Scoop. Zach_Barnett, John D. Brice 1. We love you. Stick with us every day. Footballscoop.com. Hit the scoop. See what's happening in the world of college coaching. See y'all. Bye.